Satisfying Reloads, The Art in Reload Animations by AveragePixel. Now, as somebody that plays a lot of FPS games, as someone that plays a lot of third-person games, Resident Evil 5, Resident Evil 4, etc., reloading is something that we're all too well accustomed with. And I think that certain things like this, certain things in the animation, certain things in game design, game balancing, flow of playing the game, are a little underlooked at. So having being sent this by a good buddy of mine, I wanted to make sure that I took a look at that and what this would entail. I do like that it's becoming more modern in games where you're able to look at what you're using. Is he gonna ping? He's gonna ping? Maybe? Oh, we're in for a treat. I can already tell. This is gonna be right up my alley, and I'm gonna have to try really hard not to make this a 45-minute reaction. It's so good. I do like this disclaimer because that's a lot, a lot more than other content creators will give, right? There's people that will say, oh, well, this is the thing. Okay, what's your class? What's your expertise here? What's your credentials here? And I do like when creators are transparent like this.
In retrospect, this probably sounds like a pretty pointless topic for a video disguised under a fairly pretentious title, but I genuinely believe that reload animations carry a lot of weight when it comes to making a good FPS title.
Yeah.
Wrong footage. I think it's safe to say that video games have always had a pretty intimate relationship with firearms, and when you consider the circumstances, it really is a match made in heaven.
We have things like Doom, we've had things like Wolfenstein, we've had things like Serious Sam. I would argue, absolutely. It's had a long-standing history with certain implements, as I'll say, for the YouTube algorithm and YouTube TOS. And I think something when I look at reload animations, right, is it's built-in game design because it's pacing yourself while playing the game, right? It's one thing to run around Modern Warfare 2. We're talking old Modern Warfare 2, right? 2009-ish Modern Warfare 2. And, you're running around with your Commando Pro, Lightweight, Marathon Pro, and your UMP-45, right? And, you have X amount of rounds that you can expel before you have to reload. At that point in time, with that high-paced gameplay that you're going to be using with your Lightweight Marathon Commando Pro, you're going to have to break somewhere, and you only have so many things that you can fire off before needing to reload. Therefore, being a built-in way to pace and balance the game. So naturally, with something as integral to an FPS third-person shoot, anything with a game with, certain implements, right, where you need to reload, having that presentation for reloading is absolutely something that I could see you needing to master and understand the importance of, because it is integral to running any sort of shooter game.
We're able to handle a multitude of weapons within an immersive simulated experience without the legitimate consequence of actually being shot in the face kind of exemplifies the appeal of first-person shooters to begin with. As a result of this, we've seen two things happening. On the one hand, it's a genre that's allowed developers with an idea specific to the first-person shooter framework to play with the mechanics and craft something unique. But if the release of Call of Duty Black Ops 17.5 is any sort of indication, it's that this genre is undeniably the most oversaturated.
I would argue, so here's the thing. If you want an FPS, how many games are there that are FPSs, right? You have Call of Duty, you got Battlefield, you got Tom Clancy's series, right? Rainbow Six Siege, Extraction, etc., right? You have apparently, when I was working at the theater a long time ago, one of the people I was working with, his nephew, I guess, was playing, what was it, SOCOM Navy SEALs or something on the PS3. Apparently, because of the tactics that it presented, apparently it was super good. You have Arma 3, you have Modern Wolfenstein, you have Doom, you have Resident Evil Village, right? There's so many games that you can play, and so that's how do you differentiate yourself from all the chaff, from the oversaturated market? You make sure that you're able to master what points are necessary.
At least from a AAA perspective. Look, we could sit here for hours and discuss the ways in which this genre has become seemingly stale, but instead of elaborating on that sweeping generalization, I instead want to show some appreciation to one specific aspect of first-person shooters that I hold near and dear to my heart. The art in reload animations. So, let's get started.
SOCOM was PS2 and the devs had former Navy SEAL as a consultant. That's actually super legit, though.
Making the player achieve a sense of satisfaction is something that designers are always striving to perfect. Now, you could consider the ways this can be accomplished from a more conceptual standpoint, such as satisfaction from the completion of a challenge, but what I'm referring to is much more tactile in nature. The way something feels, the way it looks, how does it sound, how does it move? When properly utilized, each of the previous characteristics can convey a certain feeling.
Right.
Power, vulnerability, strength, weakness, total fucking disappointment. When a game invokes satisfaction in even the most minuscule of ways, it aids in making the overall experience far more enjoyable.
Right.
Even when it's lacking in certain other areas. And for a lot of people, it just so happens that being presented a high-quality reload animation triggers such gratification pretty damn well.
You're mastering an aspect of the game that's going to be there. You have to reload every now and again. Not everything is Halo, where you can have modes with bottomless clip. You know, even with infinite ammo, things like modern Resident Evil 4's remake, right? Where it's not bottomless clip. You do have to, once you get down to the end of your magazine, you do have to reload. You're going to be reloaded. So you need to make sure that you're presenting it in a way that is, how do I word it? It needs to be aesthetic. It needs to make sense. It needs to trigger that sense of gratification, or that sense of, depending on what you're going for, that sense of, wow, I'm really struggling with words. I know what I want to say, but I can't say it. Like when you're in Dead Space and you run out of ammo, right? That sense of dread. There we go. Sense of dread. You know, depending on the situation, you know, in a horror or thriller title, right? Or something with a lot of suspense, right? Yeah, you're going to want that sense of dread where you pull the proverbial trigger, you know, on your on your controller, and you hear click, and you're like, damn it, forgot to reload. Now it's Ganato's going to eat my face, right? That kind of thing. Whereas in Call of Duty, right, you know, maybe you're able to utilize your AR platform in such a way that, you know, you're able to get a triple kill, and then just like, hey, last bullet, now we're going to reload, and it's a satisfying reload animation. You get to see the charging handle pull back, and it looks aesthetically pleasing to watch. If you're going to have reloading as an essential mechanic, you want to make sure that at the very least, when a lot of players can find it annoying, it's enjoyable.
Hey, I still fucking remember the first time I was taken aback by a satisfying reload in a video game. It was around 10 years ago, whilst secretly watching Left 4 Dead 2 Let's Plays on my parents' shitty desktop that came topped with a crispy 256 megabytes of RAM.
So good.
But it was specifically the combat rifle, Left 4 Dead's rendition of the FN Scar-L, and the moment the character releases the bolt and it slides forward with a gratuitous click.
Yeah, no, it's good.
It was something
dated. The animation is great.
Something magical. God, I sound like a psychopath, don't I? But a reload serves as more than just visual stimulus.
Right.
If anything, it's probably one of the strongest foundations of a first-person shooter.
Uh-huh.
The way a weapon reloads can really communicate a lot about said weapon. It's a balancing act, but at the same time, it's also a subtle way of dictating the pacing of combat itself.
So if are you going to have something like going back to Modern Warfare 2, for instance, because I spent a lot of time at Xbox Live Modern Warfare 2, let's put it that way. And you have something like, you know, the M9, right? Where it's, for all intents and purposes, a 9mm pistol in game, right? Versus something like the 357 Magnum, you're going to be boom, 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 right? And you're going to have this, like, okay, which one is going to be more powerful? Which one do you think instinctually will do more damage? You know, and then you have the 1911, which is going to maybe fall in between those two, right? And then you got the Deagle. Oh boy, get those Deagle mains coming out, right? You know, it's going to inherently showcase, one, if a certain weapon is being used, right? Specifically in certain games, right? Where you have, the L-Star from Titanfall 2. It has a very distinct sound to it from what little I've played of it, right? Especially in modernity, right? Versus something like, I don't know, a grenade launcher, you know? And it's, you know, you're gonna hear that thunk and you go, oh, it's a grenade launcher. You can inherently know, depending on the presentation of what is fired and reloading even, that what you're facing, what's currently happening, right? You know, you could be fighting something that's a like Dead Man's Tale, the scout rifle in I almost said Dead Space, Destiny, right? How it's a lever action rifle. Well, maybe in other games, you know, the lever action rifle has specific sounds, has specific animations that differentiates itself even to enemies from other weapons, right? Or certain mannerisms. There is so much going on here that a lot of people, I feel, don't even recognize. The Grand Ping as well, iconic. You know, if you're going to make a game with the M1 Garand, you're going to want that Grand Ping to be absolutely just perfect.
Is this supposed to be a fast-paced action setting like, say, Battlefield? Are we looking to achieve a somewhat grounded and methodical approach to fighting, such as Day of Infamy? Maybe your character is scared shitless and gun illiterate within a survival horror scenario like Alien Isolation. Hell, is the act of reloading so utterly redundant that it doesn't even need to be there in the first place? Because, I mean, you can get rid of that shit if you want to. Doom did it a while ago, and that actually worked towards the game's strengths. Well, minus one gun that kind of needs it to make any sense. The point I'm trying to make is that the speed of the animation comes down to the intention of the developer. A great point of comparison lies between these two games, Red Dead Redemption 2 and Insurgency Sandstorm.
I will say here, because of, I've done how many annual runs of Dead Space at this point, right? I think we're going into 4 this month. Hi, happy Spooktober, everybody. But going into Dead Space, for example, they weren't, especially Dead Space 1, they weren't necessarily guns as they are proper. They're tools, right? You can see the force gun, you know, well, it acts like a pseudo shotgun. You know, you could see it used to clear rubble or debris or, you know, things that are blocking someone's path. The plasma cutter is, for all intents and purposes, just a plasma cutter. It fires a bolt of plasma at something and, you know, can be used to cut things apart, used to dismember in the case of necromorphs, right? The pulse rifle, I would argue, is just military issued, you know, AR platform, future AR platform. Flamethrower, obviously, it's going to be your flamethrower, getting rid of, you know, messes, lighting up oil fires, I guess, if you wanted to. But regardless, we're getting into the weeds here. They present themselves as tools. So, using that logic, using the logic presented in this very video, the developers are wanting to make sure that you're not, you know, feeling like these are actual true firearms. These are tools. They reload like they would tools. They act like they would tools. And that comes down to intent versus something like, you know, the Model 1887s in Modern Warfare 2 that, oh boy, before patched, as far as I'm aware, they were snipers. Which then they patched it and they function like dual-wielded shotguns. I mean, it just comes down to developer intent, and that can go a long way into justifying why certain things reload in a certain capacity. So yeah, I'm sure there's people that have played Dead Space. Well, these guns don't feel like guns. That's not the point. That wasn't the original intent.
I'd be thinking, wait, how the fuck do these two compare in any way? And I get that. Complete polar opposites in terms of setting, technology, design, perspective, story, whatever. But the one thing they have in common is the primary way in which they allow the player to interact with the world around them. Red Dead Redemption 2 has quickly paced combat, requiring the player rapidly snap between targets to dispatch them as fast as possible.
Right. Okay.
And the existence of the aptly titled Deadeye mechanic only helps to exemplify this further.
It's high
Having
noon.
fast reloads to maintain consistency under these circumstances really is only natural. Arthur Morgan is able to reload these rudimentary weapons with such speed it'd make the professionals shed a tear. And whilst at times it does appear as though it's a little sped up, this is clearly an intentional design choice to facilitate just how frenetic gunfights can be.
Right.
And I'm okay with that. Is it unrealistic? Absolutely. But the game would probably be shooting itself in the foot if it decided to replicate just how frustratingly tedious some of these old school weapons can be.
Sometimes we really don't need that realism, and I don't think a lot of people understand that. We don't, in a lot of cases, we don't need realism. Is the game fun? That's really what a lot of people care about. Yeah, absolutely. If you're going for a realistic FPS experience, okay, you need to tailor your game around that, right? If you're wanting, you know, realistic revolver reloads, if you're wanting realistic, you know, lever action reloads, that is absolutely something that is within your ability to facilitate. I would argue if you're going to do it in a case like this, you are looking at a slower game. You have to understand that when you are, because of how inherent reloading is, right? And you can see this, let's use Destiny 2 here, right? For example, one of my favorite guns in the game. Outbreak Perfected, right? I've loved this ever since I got it. I ran the original 0 Hour. I ran 0 Hour Heroic, and not Heroic, the Vault Challenge in 0 Hour. I had to teach people how to do it to do those runs. I got that catalyst legit, and then next season and then they sunset it, and then everyone just got it for free, and that actually pissed me off. But I digress. Outbreak Perfected has a catalyst that gives it Outlaw. Thus, after getting a successful kill, you're able to reload at an increased rate, right? And doing so increases the speed of the gameplay. It increases the speed at which you can put lead down range. It is, suppression by volume of fire, right? If you minimize your reload time, you can get more bullets down range. That's why I favored Outlaw ever since I started playing the game. My BXR, that's like level 180 currently in Destiny 2, right, has Outlaw on it over Demolition because I believe in that concept so much. I might not necessarily be putting down the most damage down range, but what I am putting down range, there's going to be so much of it that it is victory by volume of fire in a lot of cases. And so yeah, when you speed up your reload, you're able to put more lead down range, which you can either use to inflate enemy health, you can use to facilitate a faster gameplay around you, you can do a whole lot of things. But if you're wanting a slower tactical game, you can lower the reload speed, and it's so integral, as he's saying, to the design of the game around it.
Handle. Pretty clear that Red Dead chooses not to dwell on the process of reloading, but in peeling back the curtain and looking at these animations from a first-person perspective reveals a stunning amount of competency and detail in its animation that you can really appreciate. I mean, it's not like I expected any less, really. This is a game coming from the same people behind such classics as Grand Theft Auto 5. Yeah, I still haven't fucking forgiven you for that one, Rockstar.
I have no interest in playing Grand Theft Auto 5, especially with some ordinary gamers doing videos on alleged security concerns that they consistently have. It's just not my game. I respect if it is your game. I have nothing against you, no ill will, just ain't my game.
All things considered, Red Dead 2 is a little notorious for how frequently it decides to flex its animated muscles.
Nice.
But for a game that's played predominantly from a third-person point of view, it really shows the lengths they're willing to go for their craft. This is a quality that Insurgency Sandstorm shares with Red Dead Redemption 2. However, the speed of reloading exists on the complete opposite end of the spectrum.
It's slower.
Insurgency focuses...
It's slower, so it's going to facilitate, I would argue, a more tactical style of play.
It's much more on trying to achieve a realistic military sim-esque atmosphere, but it's light enough on the realism part that you won't be bored to tears. The technology is modern, faster, more powerful, more intimidating. Long gone are the days of stripper clips, on-block clips, and singular round loading mechanisms, notable exceptions withstanding. Now, we've got magazines, drum mags, belts, much more user-friendly designs. All that's really asked.
So you are able to, because of these magazines, because of these drum mags, etc., you are able to throw more lead down range. So what would you do to balance that, right? If you have a faster reload, you're going to have an exponential rate of lead down range. I think we can all agree on that. But, hear me out, if you have your 30-round mags, if you have your 80-round box mags, if you have these things in the game already, you can facilitate reloading to be longer in order to help bring the game's speed, the speed at which the game is played, down a little bit, right? It's like if in Destiny, right, for example, if you gave commemoration, the LMG from, or even Thunderlord, right, the raid LMG from Deepstone Crypt, or the exotic Arc LMG, if you gave it Outlaw, right, how much more lead you could throw down range than if you had something like the BXR or Outbreak Perfected with Outlaw, right? You see how you could get back into the fight a lot quicker. If you reload too fast, make LMGs pointless. I mean, that is also fair. It is also a balancing issue between guns, right? Why would you ever use an LMG with a box mag that takes you longer to reload when you could just fire the same amount of rounds from a AR platform in that same time span, right? You could fire, say, 3 30-round mags, and the time it takes to fire 80 rounds and then to reload, you could fire 90 rounds out of 3 mags off an AR platform. You see how this could interact between the guns themselves. Absolutely.
of you is that when you're empty, you just take one out and replace it with another. I might be glossing over some of the finer real-world details, but it's simple in theory.
Speeding issue. Oh boy, those are fun.
Combat and insurgency feels much weightier. Guns recoil violently through sustained fire. They snap loudly whenever the trigger is pulled. But most importantly, even despite the giant leap forward technology-wise, the act of reloading takes much longer than most other shooters. Sure, it's slower, but not really to the point that there isn't some sense of urgency to the character's movements.
Right. Except for LMG. Dude, LMG hate, bro. It's like Sephiroth launching, it's like launching Knights of the Round times 12 on Sephiroth. I'm gonna go take a sandwich.
There's a real emphasis placed on timing your reloads right in Insurgency. You don't want to be caught with your pants down when an insurgent rounds the corner with a loaded AK.
Right.
And I understand that there's an argument to be made about how the speed of reloading could interfere with the gameplay, but I think they've hit the perfect middle ground. And besides, the meticulous effort put in by the animators to make these incredibly detailed animations that hit all the beats for a very satisfying reload is undeniable.
Right.
If you want to take a better look at some reload animations with just as much care put into them as these, there are plenty of great view model animators on this very website with channels worthy of note.
I mean, Modern Warfare 2, the most recent one, right? 2023, right? It had a lot of good reload animations. It had a lot of cool animations, like you're pulling back the charging handle, you're inspecting weapons. I mean, they really did a step up this year. People like, not necessarily because it's realistic, but because it looks flashy, because, you know, that's how the components fit together. Absolutely. Mix of reload speed, damage, and mag size. Absolutely. That's something you have to consider when balancing an FPS.
Of my personal favorites being Mr. Brightside, who worked on not only Insurgency Sandstorm, but also the original Insurgency and Day of Infamy respectively, Haru, if you like beautifully precise movements, Sully, if you enjoy some good use of exaggerated motion, and a bit
I do like the Animal Crossing style logo. That's actually super cool.
Stylization, Minty Mintness, if you're a fan of memes, and Hyper.
Nice.
Who you've probably already stumbled across either from one of his many animated reload shitposts or because you've played Titanfall 2. But what is it that makes a good reload animation? What exactly constitutes as satisfying? Whilst of course the word satisfying does imply subjectivity, I think when it comes to reloading in video games, we all pretty universally gravitate toward the same things. The M1 Garand is kind of a testament to that. You've likely heard of the 12 principles of animation, 12 essentials that animators should always consider in order to achieve the most lively appearance of motion.
I actually didn't even know this. I actually have never even heard of this. Once again, I learn new things every day doing this. It's actually the coolest job in the world. Squash and stretch, staging anticipation, straight ahead, pose to pose, follow through, slow in and out, arcs, secondary action, time exaggeration, solid drawing, appeal. I'm going to have to go through these 12 steps. If you've heard of these 12 steps, let me know in the comment section. I've never heard of these, and these all fascinate me.
After religiously watching someone else's hands on a screen put bullets in guns for the past few months, I've picked up on a few principles, so to speak, that work to make a reload stand out.
Right.
These are the things that even through a controller or a mouse and keyboard help to communicate the weapon so well I can basically imagine myself holding it. It's really nothing complex. After all, I'm a simple man, I being someone who typically chooses a gun based off the noise it makes over how well it performs, so
that's honestly valid though, as long as you're comfortable with it.
You really don't have to do too much to get me hooked. Weight and timing. I mean this in reference to how the weapon moves in the hands of the character. The first part there is fairly self-explanatory. Take for example the Beretta M9 in two different games.
God. Love me some Beretta.
Killing Floor 2, the characters swing the weapon around effortlessly, and that's representative of not only how heavy it is, but also how influential it'll be in later play. Whether that last part's intentional or not, it gets the point across. Going back to Insurgency Sandstorm, the weapon holds a little more value. The character moves slower, appearing as though the gun weighs far more than its size would imply. Like,
it's a heavy gun. The M9 is at least the one that I have access to, right? Which is obviously locked in the appropriate areas. It's obvious, right? You get what I mean, right? For YouTube TOS reasons. It's heavy. It's an all metal frame. It is a heavier heavier implement. It really is. But that's part of the charm of it.
Carrying around a sack of bricks with one hand, but that's not a bad thing. If anything, the extreme actions of its animation only serve to emphasize this point. Touching on animation theory again, an extreme in animation is the moment when a motion is at its most extreme. Essentially, they're the few frames that describe specific movements.
Right.
With reload animations, you have a lot of opportunities to really emphasize these points. Pulling back the bolt on a rifle, breaking open a double barrel, taking out a magazine, bumping in a new one, loading individual shells, releasing a slide. It all depends on what kind of gun is being used. In the case of RM9, you see that upon releasing the slide, the weight of the motion brings the gun and the character's hands slightly forward and down, the extreme being the moment where the gun is at the peak of its forward movement. And hey, feel free to go crazy with just how exaggerated the movements are. But what ties this all together is the overall timing of each movement. Improper timing only serves to break how strong an animation feels and how real it looks.
Right.
One thing in particular I've noticed is how some animators will prolong the extreme frames in their animation to emphasize the strength in each movement. There are many games out there that have captured this concept perfectly in a lot of instances, but let's focus on this footage of the double take from Titanfall 2, animated by a familiar name.
Hyper. That's the Kraber?
Capturing these few extra frames where the character/weapon is caught in the decay of their previous action really help to convey weight. Robbing an animation of these extra frames takes much of its punch away, resulting in a far less impactful set of movements. Another good example lies between one of Titanfall 2's weaker animated links, the Hemlock BFR, that I really don't like, and its subsequent remaster in Apex Legends that I genuinely love.
Never been able to use the Hemlock, honestly. To be fair, you have to understand, I also came from Titanfall 1. I really didn't play 2. And talking with people who have been... God, my buddy smurfed so hard on Titanfall 1. I think he has... Because in Titanfall 1, you could max level. I think he has 9 alt accounts that are max level. Like, that man played so much Titanfall, and he was good at it. It's just... Which was crazy. If you also want to talk about Titanfall, or Revi Barra, our mod... ping him, talk to him about Titanfall. He has a lot to say about Titanfall too. He played a lot of that too. So, but you have to. My experience in Titanfall comes from Titanfall 1. Titanfall 2 did a lot of things differently. A lot of it. There were a lot of changes that they made. Titan superiority was super necessary and was actually it does actually change the course of a game in regards to how games are played. And from what I understand, they lowered the barrier to entry with there still being a high enough skill set and a lot of the older players could go and play it. At the very least, it's super cool.
Fuck me, the animations in that game are really good. Detail and accuracy I think should go without saying, but it's certainly not a deal breaker. When animating weapons, it goes a long way to have a fundamental understanding for how they operate. It's not even that you need to highlight every single minuscule detail. Simple things like having a different animation for both a premature reload and an empty reload can go a long way, and... I
really think that this is an underappreciated concept. Incomplete reload, this is full reload. I think that's super underappreciated, and more games need that.
If anything these days, that's become the norm. But some games are simply willing to go above and beyond in this regard. Battlefield 1's acute knowledge of knowing when to use clips, when to load singular rounds, or when to use a combination of the two. Or better yet, Killing Floor 2's expert attention to detail with completely different sets of animation for both skilled and unskilled reloads, leading to weapons having a base of 4 unique reload animations each, and others a total of 6. It's
honestly, I've never really played Killing Floor 2. Like, I own it. I know Vinny Vinesauce plays it every now and again, which love Vinny Vinesauce. I'll have to look into it. I know they do seasonal events too.
Fucking ridiculous, I swear to God. But don't get me wrong, it doesn't need to be that excessive. All I'm saying is that staying accurate to the source and showing those fine details can go a long way. The last principle is a little different. Matter of fact, it's not even something that falls in the hands of the animator, and yet I'd probably consider it to be the most important.
Borderlands.
Sound design.
Yes.
Sound design really ties the whole thing together, as catching the ear is just as important as catching the eye. When handling a weapon, you want to hear those beautiful metallic sounds of polished metal sliding back and forth, pieces locking into position, the clinging as finer mechanisms are readied for the next shot, not the sound of someone fumbling around with 20 different versions of the exact same tin can. When it isn't done well, it stands out, and in some cases it disappoints. People anticipate the sound of a gun before they even use it, so when you give the people a weapon as exciting as this, it's best not to let them down with this.
Yeah. Well, sound design is incredibly important, as we've gone over, you know, on ad nauseum in these videos, right? I mean, what are you more likely to do? Are you more likely to watch a video at 360p but with excellent sound design, or watch? Actually, Mandalore Gaming actually went over this too, where or would you rather watch a video at 1080p with like super compressed audio and it sounds like this, where I'm like 5 feet away from my mic, right? Which would you rather watch? I moved back on purpose there, so I was being more quiet on purpose, right? But you can play the flashiest game, you can have the best reload animation, but if it sounds like shit, it sounds like shit. That sound design is super, super important.
The sound design works in harmony with the previous two principles, and when careful consideration is taken to make sure the sound perfectly mixes with the animation, the results can be glorious. In summary, reload animations can be pretty damn mesmerizing, especially when they're done well. And until the day comes that guns begin to generate ammo without any exterior input, I doubt they'll be going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah.
Well, unless you're making a Doom-style game or some shit. Yeah, you know what I mean. I just hope to see more first-person shooters in the future focusing on the weapons as much as their contemporaries.
Yeah.
And hell, maybe after all this, I've even helped you to possibly find some new level of appreciation for this aspect of the genre. All I know for a fact is that I'm likely on some sort of government watch list thanks to all the shit I looked up in the research phase of making this video.
Oh boy. No, at this point, it's not. If you're on a list, the real flex is how many lists you're on. Can I legally say that? For legal reasons, I'm of course joking.
Feel free to click on all the footage credits below if you'd like to.
AveragePixel, these videos were worth the wait. I love that I got sent this. This was an excellent video. This looks like it took a lot of time to play. Yeah, excuse me, a lot of time to make. This looked like it took a lot of time to film, to script, to animate. This was really cool, and this was a really good watch. And I'm actually surprised that you only have 180,000 subscribers. Everyone who watched this, if you thought that this was amazing, even if you just put it on in the background, please go watch this video. And I'm sure that they put out a bunch of other awesome videos as well. This was very informative. This brought a lot to the table, and a lot was explained. Things that, you know, in regards to the extremes of an animation, the 12 points of animation, I don't have an understanding of that. And it was really cool to see that. And as somebody who's debating on tinkering around with Unreal Engine 5, can't with Unity anymore, let's be real, but looking at Unreal Engine 5 and, hey, what about making an FPS, right? This was very informative, and it brought a lot to the table that I had both considered and not considered. I thought this was amazing. Excellent video. Can't recommend enough. Down in the comments, what are your thoughts? Do you, as an animator, know about the 12 points of animation? Did you find this video informative? Did you find this video just built different, built awesome? What are your thoughts, and what have your thoughts on this been? Let me know in the comments section. As always, please be civil, and I will see you in the next one.